Come sit down and stare at your screen. We got a presenter that you never seen. We're Feedback Friday, we're on the loose. We'll be the train, you be the caboose. It's Feedback Friday with Kathy and Amy. Mashed potatoes and the gravy. It's Feedback Friday all day long. Feedback, feedback, Feedback Friday.
Well, good morning. As you know, I only have one job and I almost failed today. That's press that recording button. Welcome to Feedback Friday. This is episode 113. I'm Kathy Hattori, president of Botanical Colors. Don't laugh at me, Amy. And joining me is Amy Dufault, our director of communications. And today we are so excited to welcome Sara Buscaglia from Farm and Folk. However, before I start there, I want to just talk a little bit about Feedback Friday, which is our bi-weekly show where we talk to artists, activists, growers, historians, scientists, foragers, just about anybody we can about our favorite color, which is natural dyes and textiles. So today, just a quick reminder, in honor of having Sara join us. She's just an amazing quilter and we're in for a real treat here. We have our Kala cotton, which is an indigenous cotton strain grown in the Gujarat area of India. We have the natural indigo shades on sale, plus the one that is a woven indigo stripe, which is super beautiful. Those are all on sale. Also, we still have a few classes open on both of our incredible teaching experiences, and we have more coming, just so you know. So like if you were like, yeah, Hawaii, not a big deal. Yeah, Japanese indigo, been there, done that. Yeah, we got other stuff happening. So we'll be introducing those and announcing them in early February. But the Japanese workshops, indigo workshops with Takayuki Ishii are filling, but we have a few spots left. And also, I don't know why this is happening, but nobody is signing up for a scholarship.
What is wrong?
Hello? What's wrong with you? There's a scholarship available
Scholarships
in many of the classes. Some of the classes are already sold out, but if there's a scholarship link in the description of the product and you would like to apply, please do so. The classes are here in Seattle. They start in July and he's here for the entire month of July. So there's plenty of opportunity to come on over and learn from a very accomplished, really, really fine artist. I think you will not be disappointed at all.
we sold out of another
okay.
class this morning, Kathy.
Okay,
Another one of the classes just sold
but
out.
I mean, even if the class is sold out, there's a scholarship available for it. If there's a scholarship link that's active, apply, please. Also for Sasha Durr, her Hawaii workshop, we have 2 spaces available, and that also is accepting scholarships, scholarship applications. So again, if it's something that you wanted to do, but you're holding back because of the financial issue, please consider applying. We welcome all applicants for both of these workshops. Okay, so enough about the scholarship deal. Now let's turn it over, but let me introduce first and just say today we're welcoming Sara Buscaglia of Farm and Folk. And Sara is an organic farmer, a natural dyer, and a folk artist who is creating these really incredibly beautiful and thoughtful quilts that are they're so tied to the work that she does with her soil and the flowers and the dye plants that she grows, and then the way that she creates and envisions all of those elements into her textile art. It's pretty amazing. So Sarah and her family are living in a rural part of Colorado. They are farmers. They've done market farming, and now she's concentrating quite a bit on her own work. But her inspiration is found in the paradigm shifting, slow processes of tending soil, seeds, and plants. And so, through her experiences of being directly connected to growing food and natural color and working with natural fibers, she's gained an understanding and appreciation of their true value. And when you look at her quilts and just, yeah, the quilts are just so restful to be in, you know, like just seeing them on the wall or displayed is really an amazing experience. I'm so excited that you even have an Instagram, Sarah, because it's just really lovely. So a little housekeeping. Amy's moderating. She'll be calling out questions in the chat to Sarah once we get to that part. Right now, chat is turned off and we've asked you to mute. After our presentation, we'll have you unmute and so we can say hello. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Sara. Welcome to Feedback Friday, Sara. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here. So I'll jump right in. To this. Oh, hold on. Okay. So Farm and Folk is a fusion of my work. Thank you for that introduction. I have to backtrack a little bit. That was amazing. Thank you so much. So kind. So Farm and Folk is a fusion of my work as an organic farmer and a folk artist, as Kathy explained. And I'm just gonna tell the story of how I started off as a farmer and how it kind of took me on this journey, and I became also a quilt maker and a natural dyer. So it kind of began in 1997. I had done 2 years of college, and I was a junior, and they kept giving me the list of majors. It was time for me to choose my major. And you know, people ask you that question your whole life, like, what are you going to be when you grow up? And then all of a sudden it was time to make that decision. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. But what I did know was that what I wanted to do was not on that list. And so I dropped out of college at that time. And that was in 96, I guess. And and I just spent a year trying to figure out what I was going to do, because I knew what I didn't want to do, but I had no idea what I did want to do. So I was 20 years old at this time, and my then boyfriend, Tommy, who's now my husband, and I were invited to our friend John's. Our friend John owned a piece of property, and he invited a lot of us out there to plant gardens. And that was my very first experience with planting anything. I grew up in the suburbs. I didn't grow up farming or anything. So this new concept of seeds and soil, I was just enamored by the whole process of that alchemical transformation of planting a seed in dark soil and watching it sprout to life, into the light, and become food that fed us. And I knew right there at the bottom right in that moment that that was what I wanted to do. And so Tommy and I kind of just figured out a way to make that happen, and we became organic farmers. And I've told that story on a couple podcasts, the Urban Exodus podcast and the We Are Lady Farmer podcast. So I'm not going to tell it here. If you're at all interested in it, you can hear it there. So the picture on the left is our children. So this is kind of like a fast forward more than 10 years on the left, and that's our kids on our farm harvesting potatoes or something. So when our first son was born, I started sewing. I had never also, just like farming, I had never sewn anything before either. And so when our first son was born, I bought a sewing machine and I bought some sewing patterns from the craft store. And I taught myself how to garment sew just by following those patterns. And started making Isaac all his clothes, and just kind of dove in head first with that and had so much fun with it. And I worked with like thrifted fabrics and stuff that you can see on the left, and like block prints and hemp fabrics on the right. Those overalls I made were hemp. So by this time I had read enough Vandana Shiva, who's one of my favorite activists. I had read a lot of her books, and I kind of knew about genetically modified cotton and wanted to stay away from it. So even at this point, this was kind of my entry into fiber arts. And I went into it with that, just knowing that I didn't want to work with genetically modified fabrics and stuff. So, and the thrift store fabrics, you know, just working with whatever you can find and source, the clothes always end up looking so unique. And I really liked that about it too. So that was my start with fiber arts. And then in 2002, I took a needle felting workshop at my son's Waldorf preschool. And this was my first time ever seeing plant dyed fibers. So at the onset of the workshop, the teacher dumped out this giant, like hefty bag of plant dyed wool roving. And it looked like this in the picture. This is not a photo from that day, but it looked like this. And I was just transfixed by this. I had never thought about color from plants before. And I kind of was just obsessed with it. And, you know, I already had that relationship with plants as food, but this whole concept of plants for color was something that I definitely felt right away that I wanted to learn and have, you know, be a part of my life. So I left that workshop with a burning desire to figure out how to naturally dye. And so this was 2002, and there weren't as many books about natural dyeing as there are available now. And so I went home and Googled it. The internet wasn't even very big in 2002, but I found Jenny Dean's book, Wild Color, and that was my first natural dye book that I had. And I read it from cover to cover and started experimenting in my kitchen and plant dyeing, roving and yarn. And I started knitting toys from it and making little toys. And I started dyeing like silks and stuff for the kids to play with. And eventually I started selling some of those things on eBay, because this was also before Etsy existed and stuff. Things have changed so much since then. So yeah, that was how I began naturally dyeing, and it's been a part of my life ever since then. So I'm kind of jumping around, but this was 2005. Tommy and I moved to what is now our farm. And one day so this was like 2 months after we moved onto this farm, he came home one day with 4 sheep. It was a birthday present for me. And he like put them in the back of our van, and because we didn't even have a way to transport them. And we didn't even we weren't set up for fencing or anything. And these sheep just lived in our backyard like dogs, and they would hang out on the porch and like look in the window at us. So as you can see, we kind of learned things by just diving in head first. But I learned how to shear the sheep and scour their wool and comb it and card it and spin it into yarn and naturally dye it. And I made these sweaters for us. That one on the left is the first one I ever made, and those are the sheep in the back. So those sheep were just so special to us. They were our pets, and it was so special to have that connection, that direct connection to our fibers that kept us warm. And it also was really made me think about, like when I went into a store, and a clothing store, and this whole experience really opened my eyes to what fibers are, and what these things that we wear, what they are. It really makes you think about all of that. And I think as makers and producers, we all kind of have that in common. So then in 2013, I made my first quilt. That's my first quilt on the left. And I made that first quilt from scraps from my sewing scrap basket. I had so many scraps from all the clothes that I had made the kids over the years. It was overflowing, and I needed to do something with it. And it just only felt like the only thing that made sense was to sew them into a quilt. So those are scraps from my daughter's dresses that I made her. I picked up a book at a big box craft store. And it was some kind of beginner quilter book. I can't remember the name of it, but it basically just walked you through the process of cutting these 4-inch squares and sewing them together, and then how to construct a quilt with, the batting layer and the backing layer and then the binding. And I was so, I just fell in love with that whole process and began making quilts one after another. After that, I felt like I had finally found my medium. And so the first quilts I made there was a lot of blogs and stuff at that time that I was reading about quilting, and that's how I learned a lot of what I did about quilt making. And there was a lot of designer fabrics and stuff, and I kind of went into this rabbit hole of working with designer fabrics, which, with the story that I've already told you, just wasn't very fitting to me and my lifestyle, and like what I knew about genetically modified cotton, and my connection to fibers and natural dyes, and just the love I had for natural colors. So after I made like a dozen quilts, I realized that I was in love with the process of making the quilts, but the quilts I was making, they just didn't feel authentic to me. So each one I made, I would give it away to someone because it just didn't feel like I even wanted to keep it. So I had to like stop for a minute and think about how I could be in love with not only the process, but also the finished product, the quilts. And so in 2015, it dawned on me that I should apply what I know about natural dyes to cellulose fabrics. And those colors on the left there are the first colors that I dyed with natural dyes on fabric. And I actually had a bunch of hemp organic cotton muslin on my shelf to even work with. So once I had this idea, I got to get started right away. And I didn't know anything about dyeing cellulose fabric. The mordanting process is different than working with protein. And on the bottom, in the bottom left corner, that teal color, I didn't know that you didn't have to use tannin on when you're dyeing with indigo, that you don't have to use a mordant first. So I like tannin and mordanted that fabric. And that mistake I made there actually taught me how to make teal because I was using a dark tannin. But those first colors that I made didn't really feel inspiring to me either, because at this time I didn't really know much about weight of fiber or depth of shade and those kind of natural dye concepts. So I just kind of like dumped like in Osage in the pot and didn't weigh anything out, and out came that like really bright saturated yellow. And then I just kind of composted the dye pot, and in time, I learned that what I really wanted, I figured out that what I really wanted was for quilt making was the different depths of shade for each color. So you can see on the bottom right, these are fabrics that I dyed recently. And so what I'm inspired by when I'm making quilts is to get that really deep, dark, saturated shade, and then to have a bunch of mordanted fabric on hand so that I can work my way through the exhaust baths and get different to make a gradation of color with out of each dye pot, and then use that gradation, those kind of varying hues in the quilt, because those varying hues, they're so subtle, but they create such depth and interest. And that's what I found to be so inspiring. In the top right, that's some madder red that I dyed. It took me about 3 years to learn how to dye a true red from madder. On the left-hand picture in the right corner, that kind of mauve color, that was what I was achieving with madder when I was trying to make red. And I was obsessing over it. I thought pH and temperature and all that, and in the end it was the most obvious thing. I just wasn't using enough madder. And it also took me about 3 years to learn how to make a true black from natural dyes. So yeah, I just spent years and years studying and researching and taking notes and experimenting until I figured out what colors I love and how to make the colors I love and all that. So these are the first quilts. This was in 2015, shortly after I began naturally dyeing cellulose. These are the very first naturally dyed quilts that I made. And these, when I started making these really felt like quilts that I was proud of, and quilts that felt like they were a good representation of my life, my agrarian life as a farmer, and that special relationship I have to fibers. And that quilt on the left is the first naturally dyed quilt I ever made. And yeah, and that's kind of when I decided that I started building a website and feeling like these were quilts that I would want to offer to others if they were interested. So it took me 2 years to actually launch my website. I built it in 2015 and didn't launch it until 2017 because I just felt so vulnerable and I didn't have the courage to put my work out there. But when I did, the quilts did begin selling, and so I was able to keep going with it. And over the years, my work has evolved a bunch. This here, I just wanted to share this project with you. This is something that I worked on all last summer. This idea came to me last winter, about a year ago from right now. The folk garden project. So in that last winter, I was inspired I felt inspired to plant a big dye garden and offer some of the dyes to people who follow along with my story on Instagram and on my website. So I planted coreopsis and sulfur cosmos, calendula, marigolds, and I shared this project from when the garden was just like a blank canvas. And my daughter and I were just planting these seeds, and I kept sharing progress shots of it throughout the summer. And then I was harvesting flowers every day for a couple months and curing and drying them. I packed them up and had them ready to sell. And I designed that quilt in the upper right, which I call the folk garden quilt. And all those colors in the quilt came from the flowers that I grew. And so I wrote up a dye recipe PDF that tells how to create all those colors, and it corresponds with the pattern. So that all of that is available in my web shop if anyone's interested. But yeah, that was just, I wanted to share that because I just love, I love the process of planting seeds and then taking that all the way up to a finished quilt. And I thought that was a fun way to share that passion with other people who might be interested. So this is me. This is just back to that love for those paradigm shifting processes of planting seeds and bringing them to a finished quilt. So that's me harvesting Hopi black dye sunflowers last fall. And not every quilt color that I work with begins here on the farm. I buy a lot of dyes too. I don't want to limit my palette too much. I love a lot of the traditional dye plants that I cannot grow, the ones that are tropical. And I'm happy to support other farmers by buying them too. So yeah, that's the Hopi black dye sunflowers. And then in the upper right, I'm winnowing some wild seeds so that I can plant them again next spring. And on the bottom right is some homegrown weld that I grew. And I do have all those available in my web shop. And so that's kind of my story. And I thought for the end of the presentation, I'll just share some of the quilts with you. This one is called Bluebird Day. It's like a bluebird day when the snow's been falling and then the clouds lift in part and the clear blue sky shows. It's that contrast of white snow and blue skies. And this one is a good example of those subtle kind of variations, which I used with the indigo. And the pink is madder at a very low percentage, I think 10% or something. But you can see I used some different concentrations of that too to achieve those kind of subtle variations. And yeah, so as I said, when I first began naturally dyeing, I didn't understand this. But over time, I figured out how to do it. And I figured out that that's what I liked, and that's what I was going for. And this quilt here is called Lady of the Lake. That's the traditional quilt block name. This one's been a quilt block, a traditional block, probably since the 17 or 1800s. And that's what I work mostly with, is traditional blocks that I kind of give my own little spin to. So this was my very first successful attempt at naturally dyed black. So I designed this quilt just with the intention to feature that black fabric, because I was so proud of it. Yeah. And this one here, this one I call the furrow quilt. As I was putting it together, the vertical rows together, it felt like the furrows that we plow every spring when we plant our potatoes. So this is another example of the subtle variations of color that I like to play with, and kind of get the colors to melt together in that way. And this is kind of when I began using that sage green color that you see, which is becoming my signature color. I think it so much of my work, you see that sage green color in now. This one also is, there's that sage green again. And it also is a traditional quilt block called the railroad block, I think. I think this one isn't a traditional Amish quilt block. But yeah, you can see those subtle kind of yet profound variations of the sage that I used. And then those yellow colors came mostly from onion skins that we grew, yellow onion skins. And yeah, so to make those, I dyed a gradation of varying hues on the fabric from the onion skin. So a real strong one down to a real light one. And then I modified some of them with Ferris to get those kind of minor moody tones. And yeah, so the whole point of this one was just to play around with those varying onion shades. And this one is called Songbird. It was just a bunch of quilts, 3 unfinished small quilts that I had found in my studio. Last year, I moved out of my small studio and into a bigger one. And as I was moving, I discovered these 3 small quilts that I had never finished and forgotten about. And so just in an attempt to clean out the refrigerator, so to speak, I sewed them all together and kind of made that bottom right panel to get them to go together. And this one actually has an indigo border it's not finished in this picture. I did more with it, but yeah, that one was just a fun little improv thing that I did. I don't do a lot of improv work, but that one was really fun. And here's just a close-up of the hand stitches. So once I began naturally dyeing the fabrics and taking the time to do that whole process, which is so intensive, I just knew that I had to hand sew these quilts to give them that, just to honor the natural dye colors and give that extra time and create that texture that only human hands can create. And then in the right, upper right, that's a big indigo dye session that I worked on a couple summers ago. I do most of my dye work in the summer. In my new studio now, I can work year round, but I prefer to work outside in the summer. When it's too hot to work on the farm, I like to take a break in the afternoon and go work with natural dyes. And I try to make as many colors as I can in the summer times and then work with them in the winter times. On the right, that's me working on a quilt back. This one was my most recent commission, and this one is not so much the variations, it kind of is, but this one is just kind of like this one kind of shouts to me like natural dyes don't have to be subtle. And so when the woman gave me the palette for this one, when I asked her what colors she wanted to use, she relayed them to me in sunrise, sunset, bear, coyote, willow, rowan. And so she lives on a lake. And so when I designed this one, I wanted to come up with a way to kind of keep it all that way. So that top left block is sunrise, and the one just kind of like diagonal and to the right of it is sunset, and bear is to the left. So I chose this ocean waves block to work with because I knew that I could kind of keep the color concepts separate. But I knew also that I could, using the variations, I could make each block kind of sparkle the way sunlight on water sparkles. And that was the whole lake element. And then she also wanted stars, and so we chose that cosmic hand stitching to represent the stars in the night sky. That one was really fun, and it was a lot. There's just thousands and thousands of pieces, and it took about 2 months to make. And then, so this one is, I just wanted to show this because people ask this question sometimes, my process, how I begin making quilts. And like I said, I usually just dye fabrics in the summertime and then open the drawers and pull colors that feel inspiring, put together palettes that way, and then come up with a design that's going to accentuate that palette or work with that palette. That's often how I work, but sometimes I design the quilt first and then dye a palette that's going to work with that. And that's what I'm showing here. On the left, this is a palette that I've put together. For this quilt that's going to be in the book that I wrote last year. I spent the year writing a book and coming up with these quilts to go in the book. So this one began with naturally dyed black, and then I used black walnut, quebracho, kutch, and Himalayan rhubarb. And the publisher gave me permission to share this quilt because it is, I entered it into QuiltCon in the handwork category, and it was accepted. And so it's going to be shown there next month. The book is in kind of a secretive stage still right now, so we're not supposed to share too much of the contents, but they did give me permission to share this one. And here it is. I call this the Jackrabbit quilt. And the whole point of it was those subtle, very subtle variations. So those dyes, the quebracho and kutch and Himalayan rhubarb and the black walnut, they're all really similar, but they're also, when you put them on that black background, you can see those very subtle differences in hue. And that's what this quilt is all about. And this is kind of where I came up with the idea of these cosmic stitches that represent the stars in a dark night sky. And I told Kathy and Amy this, but I hand quilted this too while binge watching Feedback Friday last winter, along with all the other quilts for my book. So that's that. And I guess I should tell you, I can't tell you too much about the book right now. This is my last slide, I think. So yeah, like I said, it's still in the sort of vague secretive stage as far as the contents go right now. But what I can tell you is that it is it's about natural dyes specifically for cellulose fabrics intended for quilts. And there are a good amount of color formula recipes in there for specific colors that you can recreate. And then it jumps into projects. So there's several quilt projects in it. And it's intended for various skill levels as far as both natural dyeing goes and quilt making goes. So I hope that there's something in it for everyone. That's surely my intention. The publisher is Abrams, and as we get closer to publication date right now, it's looking like late September. But as we get closer, I'll announce it on my Instagram and on my newsletter. And I just wanted to end on this one because I'm in good company of natural dyers, and you guys understand how cool indigo is. And that's me in a bubble a million times saying thank you for being here. And thank you, Amy and Kathy, for hosting me. It's such an honor to be here. This whole knowledge sharing, it's just so cool. You know, like I said, I started this natural dyeing in 2002, and these platforms to share didn't exist. And just these opportunities for people to share like this is so incredible. Yeah, thank you.
Sara, thank you so much. That was really a lovely, lovely, mindful journey into the way that you are creating and the things that you think about as you're creating. That was really lovely for us to hear about. I think it's interesting, yeah, that like I was trying to think, like, why did I ever get interested in natural dyes? And I was in college and someone had a senior show, and they had made a very simple, just 4-inch square patch quilt, and it was just hanging, and it was this, you know, beautiful array of very, very interesting, almost the same but not quite the same colors. And I think that's what stopped me in my tracks. I just went, what is that? It's such a revelation when you see it. And I didn't even know what a natural dye was. That didn't even mean anything, but it had an effect.
Right.
I'm going to turn this now over to Amy, and I know she has a ton of questions,
Mhm.
and we've got about 15 minutes. So,
Oh.
Amy.
Oh, Lord.
Go for it.
Okay. Thanks, Sarah. There's a couple questions that I'm gonna skip over because people have asked the same thing, but a couple people have asked, do you sew everything by hand, machine, or both?
Both. So every quilt begins, I piece it on the sewing machine, and then it's finished with hand stitches. So all the little tiny pieces are sewn together on the machine. But then the final stitches, that like in that one slide that I showed you, that's all done by hand.
Beautiful. All right, I'll keep myself out of this because it's not about me. It's about you and your beautiful work. All right. So I think this is a really nice question. How do you navigate the paradox of needing to be vulnerable to share your work with all of the internet and to sell it, like being vulnerable like that? You have such a huge following on Instagram.
Yeah, it was really hard at first, like what I talked about earlier. That first initial like leap of faith to put yourself out there and put your work out there. I don't know, it's just something that you have to do, I guess, if you want to do this. But it is really scary and a really vulnerable feeling. Yeah, now I don't really feel that way anymore. I've been doing it for so long that sharing is just kind of something I'm used to and part of what I do every day. And like 99.9% of the time, people are just really kind and supportive, and that's
Everything
really
you're doing is so inspirational too. It's like it just inspires people. Like you were talking before about the subtleties of color and exploring the dyes and the different colors that you could get from one dye bath, and it gets people thinking about all the different things that they can do with color and quilting and hand stitching and being creative.
And that's another reason I like to share. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so many people have shared to get me to where I am. And so it's just such an important part of it all, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Let's see. I didn't get all the plants you grew: marigold, coreopsis, and question mark. Beautiful colors. Any special tips on growing coreopsis?
This was my first year growing it. It seemed like really easy to grow, but I don't, I've been farming for a really long time. But it didn't, the seeds are kind of big. Sometimes I feel like if the seeds are really tiny, they can be hard to get to germinate, like chamomile, that's really small. But no, that one, it's really easy to grow. It kind of grows like a weed, I found. So just plant it as soon as you can, as soon as your last frost has passed and the garden can be worked. Plant it in rows, probably spaced a foot apart or so. And yeah, once they start making flowers, you should begin picking them right away, because that will make it want to produce more flowers. And boy, does it produce a lot of flowers. The coreopsis is prolific.
Yeah. Okay, at least probably 4 people have asked, how do you get your black?
It's not something that I can really answer, because I can tell you that recipe is going to be in the book, and I've been keeping it like on lockdown for all these years. But that's going to be its big debut is in the book. But Kathy has a black recipe that she's shared, and mine is pretty similar to it.
All right.
On botanical colors, I've seen you guys post that. I figured out how to make black with a small amount of iron. I only use 5% weight fiber. But yeah, end of September, that one you can have in your hands.
All right. I think everybody will buy the book just for that.
That's what I'm hoping.
Always trying so hard to get that black, and you got such a good one. And I'll put that link to how to make your own signature black in the video post, the recording. Okay, here's another one. It might be that it will debut in September with your book too, but somebody's asking what makes the sage green color your signature?
Yeah, that one's in
They
there
want
too. But it's a combination. I do that with, and I kind of explain a little bit how I do that in the flower dye recipe PDF that you can purchase on my website. I kind of share how you can create different shades of teal, and that sage that's how I do it. But I'll give you the exact measurements and stuff in the book for that one.
Alright.
But it's just like a light yellow into a light, like a low strength indigo vat.
Mm.
So getting different shades of greens and teals happen that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on the strength of your yellow and the strength of your blue.
Mhm. Okay, let's see. Okay, do you keep a dye journal now? How do you keep track of experiments and measurements? I feel like you would have a beautiful dye journal, says Ellery.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I do. So my dye journal, my personal notes are my most valuable dye book of everything, because they're it's notes of my own personal alchemy and the colors and that I can achieve here with my own alchemy. So I record, I'll show you, I think I have it right here.
Oh.
This is my most recent one. It's like this big,
Ooh,
this
oh boy.
big journal. Wait, I've got it upside down. Yeah, so I just I affix the samples in there with hot glue mostly, or tacky glue that I kind of paint on. So like this, for example, I like to do a lot of studies, and I conduct lots of studies to find answers to whatever questions that I have. So like this is all madder that I worked with, and like this is different kinds of tannins and different kinds of mordant, alum mordants, and different strengths. And I'm just nerdy like that. I like to keep all these like extensive notes, but I'm always like, if I don't keep notes like that, then I get frustrated with myself, because if you ever want to go back and create the same color and you didn't write it down, then you have to redo all the experimenting to try to figure out how to get that color.
Mhm.
So yeah, dye journal. That's
All
my
right. They're very personal too, dye journals and
yeah.
scrap kind of journals. I mean, you don't always have to just have like recipes and things in there. Like I've definitely flipped through friends who have swatch books, and it's more about the place they were in, the weather, the birds that were out. You know, it can be very poetic and beautiful, and as well as very sciencey and
Absolutely.
yeah. Okay, here comes a real direct question.
Okay.
Sarah, what do you mordant with on the cottons?
So my go-to mordant is always begins with tannin, and I really have like deep dived into studying different tannins and using tannins. So there's 3 different kind of tannin categories: the clear, the yellow, and the dark. And I like to mess around with using tannin shades as not only a pre-mordant, but as a base color to build colors on. And like for example, if you use a dark tannin and then dye it with something like Osage, then you can get this kind of cool ochre color. So I like to use tannins in that way, but I always begin mordanting with some kind of tannin. And then I go to potassium aluminum sulfate is my go-to, which I know is kind of unorthodox. Like aluminum acetate is the one that is mostly considered for cellulose fabrics, but I have really good results with the potassium aluminum sulfate, and I like working with it better because it's got that heavier salt consistency. It's not the aluminum acetate, it just smells and it like billows.
Airborne.
It's airborne, yeah. And I don't really
You
like
have to wear a mask.
You have to
You
wear a
have to
mask.
do.
Yeah. And
You
then
know,
it
the
gets so
tan and
hot.
alum, yeah, it's everywhere. The tan and alum is like the historical tannin method. And I had it tested versus aluminum acetate, and it actually was it performed better as like an upholstery fabric than aluminum acetate, even with post bath. So it just kind of depends on, you're trying to create a sense of heritage and heirloom. And so tan and alum is really a great solution for that.
Well, I'm so glad to hear you say that, because in my own personal studies, that's what I found. But it's just like really good to hear you say that too. So thanks.
That's like Kathy's favorite way of mordanting. Okay, let's see. Do you use a computer graphics program to lay out the colors, or how do you do it? And this person says, I'm looking at an Ocean Waves commission quilt. So how do you lay it all out? How do you
Okay. So I'm like super old school and I need paper and pencil. So here is the Ocean Waves quilt that I designed. It's on dot paper. I just use a paper and pencil. And it took me several days to design that quilt. And I know that if I brought it into Photoshop or some kind of software, seeing that it would speed things up. But I just haven't taken the time to figure out how to do that yet. So yeah, most of this stuff I plan for clients happens with dot paper and a pencil.
Mhm. Reading some of these questions is okay. I'm going to go back to this one that said somebody was asking about the significance of the triangles and why you use them as much as you do, just based on probably what they saw here.
Yeah, no, it's just I work mostly with traditional pieces and blocks, and yeah, like half square triangles. There's really not a single quilt I ever make that doesn't have half square triangles in them. You can put them together in all kinds of different ways and create all kinds of different shapes. They're just so versatile. So yeah, that's I don't think I could make a quilt without triangles.
Yeah. Let's see. How about this one? Beautiful work, fascinating presentation about your lifelong development. You make gorgeous colors. I am wondering about patterns. Do you ever find yourself exploring beyond traditional patterns to develop your own patterns and designs?
Thank you. Yeah, I do. And some of the quilts in the book I designed, and yeah, I'm definitely going more towards that these days, or just putting traditional blocks together in different ways. Like in that example of the songbird quilt that I did, that was kind of improv, but yeah, I'm so happy also with just working with the traditional patterns and kind of putting my twist on those and how to put them together. But yeah, in the book there is one pattern that I used as an example of how to take the traditional pieces and put them together in your own way.
Okay, well, it feels like it's so abrupt. I'm looking right at you. But we run out of time, and you probably need to drink some water from answering all these questions. But lots of people loving your presentation. Thanking you for your presentation, that you're inspiring. and more. So when we put the recording up, just check out the chat. The chat's always comes with it. So just see all the nice compliments people gave you.
Thank you, everybody. So kind.
All right, everyone, let's go ahead and unmute so we can say hello to Sarah. And Sarah, that was just really lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Sarah.
you.
See everyone.
Thank you.
Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. It was
Good to
beautiful.
see everybody again.
Yes,
Thank you. Thank you so much. Beautiful work.
thank you. Yeah, it was beautiful. Beautiful.
Thank you. Very inspiring.
Amy, can I ask, are these just once a month or every other week? I kind of got out of sync.
There we
That's
go.
okay. A lot of people are asking that. Yes, we're doing them every other week.
Okay, great.
Yes, yeah. And yeah, so we're trying to.
But they're
trying to
all on
keep it up.
YouTube or on our website if you miss
Right
one.
now, yeah, right now, half of the recordings, just in case if you're like feeling sad, like, oh man, I wish we had a Feedback Friday this week. You can
Yeah,
go
well,
to-
at least we can get out. It was this one thing that kept me going all those months. I couldn't go out. And,
Yeah.
But I
Amy,
still
you
enjoy
need-
seeing
Amy, you need to
everybody.
really tell people to donate to the cause.
Yes,
thanks,
how do we do
Debbie.
that?
Yes, yes.
Wait.
It's important. It's important to donate
You
to
gotta
the
We have
really,
a under every Feedback Friday video, there is a donate link.
Correct.
And it's and it's you can name your price. It could be $1, it could be $10, whatever you would like.
Okay, it's worth it.
Thank you. Thank
Thanks,
you for your
Lisa.
support.
yeah.
If you use credit cards,
Yes.
If you use credit cards, yes. If you don't, we'll take Bitcoin.
how about checks?
I'm just
Well,
kidding.
yeah,
I don't
I mean,
even know what Bitcoin is.
I don't either.
It's been interesting with people donating too. Sometimes it's like we have, there's this dedicated, wonderful group that donate for every single time they come on. And then we have people who will do this one lump sum and they're like, that takes care of it for the year. I feel good. Whatever, like I said, whatever you want to do,
Okay.
yeah. We appreciate it, the support for it. And we pay our presenters. So we would just want to make sure everybody's, we can keep these going.
We appreciate you.
Thanks,
Just
Debbie.
So
Print an
appreciate it.
address
Debbie.
to mail a check.
Oh, right, Leslie. Sorry. I think that's on me. I don't have an admin, so
I don't care wherever you get your mail. I don't care if it's a P.O. box. I'm very old fashioned, I guess.
Yeah, you can send it to Mashpee, Massachusetts.
Wait,
In the-
Mashpee?
No, I'm kidding, Leslie. It's my house. That's her address. Yeah, I'll drop my address in the chat.
Well, the check goes to Botanical Colors, so I don't care if it's your address.
all right, Leslie, we'll send that
Yeah.
to you.
All right,
Maybe you could
thank
send one of those
you.
really big ones and I could stand out in the front yard with like one of those really big.
Oh yeah, it's like one of those
Oh,
ceremonial
you have
ones.
won $10 million,
I'll do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, Amy, I am
Yep.
gonna run and we're supposed to
Okay.
meet, yeah?
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
Bye, guys.
All right, thank you so much, Sarah.
All right, have a great weekend. Happy New
Everybody
Year.
you
do
too.
something creative. Go make
Thank
something.
you again, Sarah.
Thank you so much.
So nice.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
All right, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.